Hi, I'm Jennifer of Celtic Knot Crochet, and I wanted to show you this blanket I've made with all these pretty blues. Isn't it so nice? And then we have this. Look at them all these ends. Ick! These are all the ends that are created when you change colors in your crochet project. Most crocheters can't stand these little things. Sometimes they're called yarn tails, and you actually have to weave them in one by one. Yes, it can be tedious, but it is a necessary part of your project so that it looks neat and finished, and it doesn't come apart or unravel after you wash it and use it. So in this video, I'm going to give you 10 tips of how to weave in these ends and give you some tips on tools to use and even show you a little trick for preventing having to do it even in the first place and to cut down on the number of tails you have at the end of your project. If you like this video, please give me a thumbs up or click to subscribe, and make sure you write which tip is your favorite in the comments below. So let's get started. Every crochet project has at least one starting end, or a yarn tail, and one ending yarn tail. For every new color, you will have at least 2 more ends. Make sure you allow for at least 6 inches of length for each end. To weave in the end, you will need a yarn needle. Sometimes they are called a tapestry needle. It has a nice big eye that the yarn can fit through. Thread the needle and work on the wrong side of your project. Insert the needle into the back of the stitches where the tail begins. You'll just go through the facing loops of each stitch. Continue this across about 2 to 3 inches and then work your way back in the opposite direction and try to go through other stitches. To make it really secure, you can go back in the first direction one more time. Then carefully cut the yarn at the point of the last exit. Just like there are many hooks that you probably have right now in your notions bag because you need a different hook for different projects and different size yarn, I recommend also having a wide variety of needles in your notions bag because different needles work best for different projects. Here are the yarn needles that I keep in my notions bag. Let's go through each one so you can learn which one to use for each of your projects. This right here is your standard yarn needle with a standard opening for the yarn. Sometimes they're called tapestry needles, and it works well for your everyday medium weight yarn. These needles here are slightly smaller than your standard tapestry needle, as you can see. They're embroidery needles. This one here is much bigger and has a nice big eye, but I find this works well for size 3 thread. And then this very small one works well for size 10 thread. As you can see, because the thread is smaller, I wouldn't really want to use this large tapestry needle because it would create a lot of holes in my delicate, dainty projects. Since this is a small needle, I like to keep it on a scrap piece of paper like that so it's easy to find and I won't lose it when I'm digging around in my notions bag for other needles. These needles here have a large hole on top, a large eye, but they also have a bent tip. Can you see that? And I found that these were great if you were working on a flat surface and you needed to stitch something together, or you were weaving in a lot of ends. This bent tip helps you go into the stitches quicker. I also found that this bent tip helped when I was weaving in my ends after working with plarn, plastic bags made into yarn. And I found the bent tip, the blunt or dull bent tip, worked the best. These needles here work great for bulky yarn, like a blanket yarn. Very chunky, would never fit through your standard yarn needle, and it would drive you crazy. But these are great. They can expand to very, very wide, but then they have a nice point on either end to weave through your stitches. I highly recommend these needles for working with the thicker yarn. These are the only needles that I recommend that are plastic. All the other plastic yarn needles, in my opinion, do not work well at all. Do you often lose your crochet hook in the couch or on the floor or in your notions bag? I always seem to lose my needles either somewhere around where I'm working, in my notions bag. They slip out because they're so thin they fit right through the fabric of different bags that I've used to contain them. So my solution: use a hard case to contain your needles. I bought this container at my local craft store with some sewing pins inside it. I love how it is clear so I can see inside. It has a snap-on top and keeps everything together and ready. You can also repurpose a pill bottle to keep your needles together. Most patterns say this, and it is a good tip. Weave in ends as work progresses. So if you're like me, to follow that advice, you'll have to resist the urge to keep crocheting, and you'll want to pause and weave in your ends as you go along. That way you won't have as many at the end of your project and it won't be so overwhelming. Sometimes when we're finishing a crochet project, we accidentally cut our yarn tail too short. Don't worry, there's a way to remedy that. Here's how. Here you see a very short end. So just weave the needle first, then thread on the yarn and pull it through. You can repeat this process until the end is hidden to your liking. I don't know about you, but when I spend a lot of time on a project, I want to be sure that it's not going to come undone or unravel. So sometimes I tie a double knot with the yarn tails. When I'm working in the round, the yarn tails end up close, and it's easy to tie them in a double knot. But if the last tail is far from other ends, I make a knot on itself, and then I weave it in as usual. Sometimes while we're finishing our project, we realize we forgot our notions bag and we don't have any needles with us. So here's how you can fix that. You can use your crochet hook to hide the end, like so. Just insert the hook through the loops and pull the yarn tail through. Or you can bend a paper clip into a makeshift needle if you are in a pinch. Not as good as a real needle, but it works. We all know that weaving in ends can be very tedious, but if you have good lighting, it can make it so much easier. So I recommend sitting by a window, using an hot light or another bright light, or even sitting outside. That way you'll be able to see all the stitches and how you're weaving in those yarn tails, and your project will come out looking its best. As I mentioned before, many crocheters dread the chore of weaving in your ends. But don't worry, you can make it fun very simply. Go ahead and put on your favorite movie or put on some of your favorite music. You could even put in your earbuds and listen to a podcast or talk to a friend. That way your hands are free. You'll love the conversation and the time will fly. If you've been crocheting for a while, then you might already know this tip. But there is actually a way where you can prevent having to weave in some of your ends. And I'll show you that right here. All you need to do is carry the yarn tail along as you start crocheting with the new color. Make sure that you're working your stitches over the tail, and there you go. Ta-da! It's being hidden while you crochet. Simply cut the tail after some stitches, and you have one less end to hide at the end of your project. So there you have 10 weaving tips. I hope the tips in this video help save you time and help your crochet projects turn out better. Make sure to give us a thumbs up, click to subscribe, and watch the next video, 10 crochet hacks. Happy crocheting!